Welcome to On the Line. I'm Christine Williams. Coming up for discussion on our Viewpoints Hour. There's been a green shift. Now Elizabeth May has been granted a voice in national televised debates. Our world changed after 9/11. 7 years later today, do you think we've become paranoid? And are you comfortable with armed officers in high-risk schools? Stay tuned. And these are the issues we're presenting today to our Viewpoints guests for commentary. Green Party leader Elizabeth May, she's now got her wish, an equal voice in national televised debates. Do you agree with this change of heart? It's the 7th anniversary of 9/11, a day that changed the world. Given anti-terror laws and airport security measures, do you think they are justified, or have we become too paranoid? And 2 Toronto Public Board trustees have put their foot down on a proposal to station armed police officers in high schools in their wards. Now let's meet our Viewpoints guests to talk about our subject matters today. Paul McKeever is leader of the Freedom Party of Ontario, and Al Kerouac is publisher for the Halton Herald. And you, the viewer, we want to hear from you because you are our third guest. Feel free to call in at any time with any of your comments, which brings us to the first story today. And I called it a green shift. Elizabeth May, here it is. Greens to be in debates. That struck a chord with many people a few days ago when Elizabeth May was, according to many sources in the media, ganged up on. It went something like this in short. Stephen Harper didn't want to appear on televised debates with her, so Stéphane Dion said, well, if Stephen Harper's not going to be on debating with her, well, then I'm not going to be part of that either. And Jack Layton jumped on board, Parti Québécois, and before you knew it, nobody wanted to be on TV, national debates with Elizabeth May. She got mad, and so mad, in fact, that she threatened court action. Ever since, there's been a shift. Stephen Harper says he will have that debate with her, and all the other party members, leaders, have conceded as well. And the question that we're asking you, according to many newspaper reports, they're saying that you, our public, you got angry about that. You thought that she should be given an equal voice in those debates. So why was everybody scared about it? But we're asking you the question on the line today. Do you believe that she should be part of those televised debates? Now, of course, we're going to hear from our guest today, but we want to hear your input as well. So call in at any time and let us know what your point of view is. And for this one, I'm going to start with you.
Right.
Paul, do you think she should be part of these debates?
I do. Not necessarily in the way she got on. I mean, I think what happened there was the consortium used the excuse that, well, some parties don't want them on and our hands are tied. And well, they didn't want them on either. The consortium did not want the Greens on. But when the leaders said, well, you know what, she can be on, they were stuck. They had to let her on because their excuse had gone out the window. Of course, the only reason the party leaders had changed their mind was because she raised the sexism card, and they didn't want to be smeared for this entire election, falsely and wrongly, by the way, as being somehow sexist. So, she played her card, it worked, she's on. But we are still left with a situation where there is no principled approach to determining who's on the debate. I think the appropriate thing to do, given that every frequency, every channel is ultimately a state property that's licensed to a private company, I think the appropriate way to do this is to say, look, these are potential prime ministers that we're looking at. If they don't have parties, or if they're not running a slate of candidates that's at least great enough to form a majority government, then we know they can't be a prime minister, so they shouldn't be there. So to my mind, the clear line is not, are you registered or any of these other things, how well did you do in the last election or anything. The real key is, can you put together an organization that is running 50% plus one of the seats in Canada? And that is no small feat. That's a hugely difficult thing to do, but it does demonstrate that you are potentially a prime minister and you deserve to be on that stage.
Paul, you think it was the sexism card that got her in?
It unfortunately was, but she's on, and that's the right conclusion. The way she got on is not the way what if there's a male leader of the Greens next time? It's not going to work again.
Okay. Al?
Well, I mean, I was one of the people that were angry at first, and I was led to believe it was the media consortium that
Why are you angry, first of all? Why are you angry that she wasn't being allowed on?
Any time that a political candidate or a party is purposely omitted from a debate, I mean, that's of some concern of mine. But what was a bigger concern was I was led to believe when I was reading the CBC article that it was the media consortium that made the decision that she wasn't going to go on. And my immediate reaction was, why are we letting the media decide who gets to be present at these debates? And so I was a little concerned about that. My other concern that I share with you both is that now how do we deal with this, and how do we develop a system that is open, that is fair, unbiased, and allows all candidates, all party candidates, to interact, and it's a great opportunity for Canadian public to get some insight and see how these leaders will perhaps not only react at the debate, but if they do get into office, if they are elected, or if parts of their or rather members of their party get elected. So I think it's something that really needs to be further developed, and we've got to be open to changing that system, because the last thing I want, I mean, let's face it, we've got basically now it's a 2 or 3 party system, and candidates are always trying to persuade the voters to go from one to the other, and the wave seems to go just like that. So I think we need to further develop it, and
and it's certainly going to heat up, and we'll be talking about some of that politics pretty soon. But for you watching, we want to know, when you heard in the news that Elizabeth May was being shut out of those debates, did it strike a chord with you? We'd like to know how you feel about this matter. Now, it's come up on the front pages that she is going to be allowed after all. Are you happy to see it? Let's go now to you, Gail, on line 4. Hi, Gail, you're on the line.
I think she's 100% right that she got in, you know, to speak in the debate, because there's 3 other candidates. And they just have the equal right as she does, you know.
Yes. Okay, Gail, thanks for calling in and sharing that. Now, there's one question I have for the two of you, and for you watching. As far as I know, she's making history here, because televised debates are a natural part of our election process. The leaders get up there, they're challenged before the public. But have any of you out there, and you, ever heard of a party leader that really didn't have official party status, no members of parliament, going there before a televised debate and joining in? Or is Elizabeth May making history on this one?
Well, official party status is usually related to having a certain number of members in the House.
Of Parliament, yes.
And I guess Joe Clark of the Progressive Conservative Party, they only had 2 seats coming out of the 2003 election, and I believe they were allowed onto the debate floor nonetheless the next time out, even though 2 seats does not an official party make within the parliamentary system. In any event, I mean, all these parties are registered, but that's a separate matter from being official, as that term is meant.
And in her case, she doesn't have members there. How do you? Yeah, it's a concern for you, Zara?
It's a concern. I mean, I'm on both sides of the issue, and you know, on the other side of the issue, we've got to deal with. She isn't an elected representative. None of her members are elected representatives. So if we open the door to her, then how do we stop that floodgate?
How do we stop that floodgate? You see, this is critical, because, in my opinion, and I'd like to know how the two of you feel about this, in the debates that followed, plus it was mentioned in more than one article that Jack Layton, even his Facebook, it was flooded with even his own supporters and some members within his own party saying, you know, how dare you? Why would you leave out Elizabeth May? Yet at the same time, there's that question of, she doesn't have any members of parliament, so is this a privilege that she has seen that nobody else has? Yes.
I disagree entirely with how many members of parliament you have, and the reason is this: nobody has any members of parliament as soon as the parliament is dissolved. That's the whole point.
Interesting.
Nobody is a member right now.
Interesting point.
And you know, if the point of the debate is to debate ideas, then surely we don't say, well, because the ideas discussed 4 years ago got these people into the legislature 4 years ago, they are still the ones who have the, I mean, hopefully they're talking about different ideas now. So the ideas are old ideas that they had that got them in. There's no reason to believe that their new ideas are worthy of, you know, a seat. And so I think we have to have a criterion that says past performance is no indicator of future performance. What matters is, have you brought enough members, have you brought enough candidates to the floor to be taken seriously as, remember, these are people, not just members of parties, these are the people who would, if they had a majority of seats in the Parliament, be appointed by the Governor-General as Prime Minister of Canada. So this is really a pre-prime ministerial debate. And the only people I think you can truly exclude in a principled way are those who mathematically could not be Prime Minister. And believe it or not, there will be very few parties that will manage to get 50 seats plus one. I've run in several elections. I've been the leader of a political party in 2 of them. And in neither of them, because we are a small political party, have we managed to get 50% plus one. And I would argue that on that basis, we would not have been justly included in a leaders debate. 50% plus one is difficult, and very few parties achieve it. I think it's a natural and perfect way of drawing the line.
Now that's interesting, because it leads right into the question I was going to ask you, the 2 of you developed, about Al's very legitimate concern. How do you control those floodgates? Plus, to take this into consideration, now Elizabeth May, the Green Party, that platform says it all. But what about the new Liberal Green shift? A little bit of overlap there, and how does this play in? We'd like to know what you think about this situation. Do you agree that Elizabeth May, do you want to see her in the national televised debates? We want to hear from you. We're going to go for a break. We'll return after this. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Viewpoints on the Line, asking you the question, do you think Elizabeth May should be a part of the national televised debates? Do you want to see her on that platform? Question for the 2 of you, first of all, before we go back to where you draw that line. What do you think was behind her being left out of the picture in the first place? All kinds of speculation in the opinions, the editorials. What do you think was really behind that?
I think the consortium has a lot more power than they let on. It's not
Absolutely.
that the parties get to choose. The consortium is representing, it's the front end of a lot of business interests and union interests even, and it decides who they want on, because they're trying to protect the rights, privileges, etc. They don't want change of any dramatic sort. They can deal with a little bit of change, but they don't want big changes. And so if you let somebody on like the Greens, who are proposing, perhaps major changes, even if they don't know what those changes might be, they might say, unpredictable, we don't like unpredictability, we know we've got our thumb on the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the NDP, and we don't even have to worry about the NDP too much, we know they're not going to win. We've got our thumb on these 2 big ones, we don't want to bring in new people. So these rules will have to come from without, they will not come from the consortium. And when people like Andrew Coyne say, we need a third party to set the rules, I think he's absolutely right.
Yes.
Well, I think it was more, media loves a show, so I don't think it's too much of an issue. Although I think that, there's a definite threat of stealing votes away from the 2 parties, and this is going to be a tight race, and or the 3 parties, let's say. And it's going to be a tight race, and I think that had a lot to do with it. Not so much through the consortium, but through the political backbenches of each party, and it's a threat. It's a definite threat.
Now, on the note of what you're saying there, Stephen Harper was the one that was identified by many newspapers as being the one that started this whole thing, saying, I don't want to be on a national debate with her. There may be a gang up. I don't know what the reason was. You see one thing in one paper, you see a different slant in another. But whatever was behind that reason, do you believe it started there? That's how it seems to be.
Yeah.
And then came news that Dion was saying, well, if he doesn't want to argue with her on national TV, I don't either.
Yeah, I don't think it did, frankly.
You don't think it started with him? He was just being... Al, you got a smile on your face. What do you think?
I think it did. Let's face it. He's been labeled the control freak of the Conservatives by some of his own members. And, Turner's a prime example. He's given us some keen insight into the mind makings of our Prime Minister.
So did he prove himself not to be a control freak by changing?
Why would anybody even, especially a Prime Minister, saying, I'm not going to go to debate because somebody's going to be there? That is ridiculous. That to me is like, well, what are you doing representing us? We want to hear. Are you scared that they're going to raise some issues that you don't want to talk about or deal with? And that's a big concern of mine.
I don't think he's at all scared. I don't think they share the same constituency. But I think what he was afraid of, if he was afraid of anything, was that in the past, recent past, there was a deal between the Liberals and the Greens that the Liberals would not run against Elizabeth May in her home riding. And in exchange, Elizabeth May said, I think Stéphane Dion should be the next prime minister. She said that. So I think, there's this thing called oath helping. The idea is, if Stéphane Dion's up there saying I should be the next prime minister and she says, I agree, well, what kind of debate is that? And you've got sort of a 2 against 1 thing going on there. I think it was a fair criticism, although I have to say at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to matter. In fact, I think that Stéphane Dion, by not taking a stand against her being on the stage, has just given the majority to the Conservative government.
Interesting, because the next question would have been, if she's touting Stéphane Dion, then why is it that he was against her being part of the debate? Because Harper didn't want to be part of it.
That's, I think,
Where was do you see this overlap between the green shift to raise these billions of dollars through carbon tax? Do you see any problem there with that overlap between the Liberals and the Green Party?
From my perspective, no, but that's because I think these policies are all suicidal. So
the whole green thing.
The idea of taxing or regulating the things that we exhale, I think, is insane. But it's caught on. It's become popular due to some misgivings given out in that popular movie by the former vice president, and so they're all jumping on it right now, except the Conservatives. Yes. And so the more ways they split that, we're going to tax carbon, regulate carbon, take away your car, take away. Hey, the more parties are saying that, the fewer of them will ever actually achieve it. You're taking that CO2 thing, splitting it 10 ways to Sunday, and leaving the Conservatives all of the rest of the vote. So I think it really works out well for the Conservatives.
Yes. What about you, Al?
I'd have to agree with them that Canadians feel overtaxed, and any threat or any suggestion of increased taxes is going to be detrimental to anyone proposing it. And so it's a catch-22. And I think the Green movement is a lot smaller.
Do you think the Green movement is really resonating with Canadians? Do you think that?
I think with a certain segment of the population, yes, and I think it's very small. I think we're all concerned, but how do you deal with it? It's a huge elephant, and we're just now all becoming aware of it. And no, I don't think we're ready to pay for it, and I think you're right.
I agree. I think the Green movement isn't near. I think it's actually very small. It's the mouse that's pushing the elephant. And what's really going on? There was a recent poll just a few days ago that said basically the people who support the Green Party are people who don't necessarily support environmentalism. They just don't like any of the other parties. They're looking for a protest party.
True.
And they're not as hilarious as the rhinos, but there's someone else you can vote for and still say, well, at least I voted. So that's what they say is a mile wide and an inch deep type support. It's not really that they're in favor of the Green agenda. They're just in favor. They're just not willing to vote for the other parties. And I think that's discussed with government and the political process in general.
Does it surprise you, though, that the Liberals, such a known party in Canada, would base, so far, it looks like a campaign on this green shift? Does it surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me because of Dion's campaign coming into the leadership contest. He campaigned with as a green tie wearing green liberal. The most bizarre association. I mean, think about what he's done. He's taken 30, 40 years of associating the color red, the liberal color red, with the Canada and the red flag. He's taken that and just thrown it in the garbage and said, we're the Green Party. It's the most insane marketing ploy I've ever seen in my life, and I think it's going to haunt him horribly. It was a bad thing. He thought, at the time, all the newspapers were full of green this and green that. And he said, great, I'm going to release a green platform and everyone will love me. And
I think it's a mistake?
Yeah, because the economy tanked right after that. And so now he's left with a thing that says, we're going to raise taxes. Yeah. What? That's your campaign going into this?
But then, ironically, there's a campaign promise to take that same money that he makes through the green shift and put it back into taxpayers' wallets. Well, that's what he's saying. Let's go now to Ted on line 4. Hi, Ted. What do you think?
Good afternoon, Christine.
Good afternoon.
On the first point, absolutely Elizabeth May should have been allowed in these debates, and I really appreciate the comment of your guest that if a party can bring 50% plus one candidates, potential candidates to the table, then they should be allowed. We live in a democracy.